Welcome back to the Mega Man 5 Let's Play Perfect Run. Must do 0063 here to guide you through another Robot Master stage. And no clever introduction I'm afraid this time, so let's just get started. This level takes place in outer space, and that means low gravity, so the first thing to mention is to watch where you're jumping. First screen is just a meteor shower dodging exercise, kind of reminds me of Recton, if any of you are familiar with that puzzle-based game. And we have some more of these cannon enemies we saw in Gravity Stage, and they're just as easy to deal with. As are these bounders, which bounce up and down, and occasionally firing pellet shots at you. But they're so slow moving, the pellet shots that is, that you shouldn't have any trouble avoiding them. And as I said before, what with daftly placed cannon enemies, you can even take them out at a certain Gravity Stage before they even get the chance to attack you. Now coming up on this next part, try to stay on the ground where you can, obviously with the spikes in the middle of the screen and the low gravity in effect. You don't want to be jumping here all that much. Now you could get caught off guard here on this next screen, but just don't panic. Take stock of the situation before you leap. And I do mean leap, remembering the low gravity. So if you need to jump really high to avoid the pellets, don't hesitate to do so. Here's our second letter M of the game. Just don't jump too high or you'll hit the spikes. Make a few practice jumps if you need to get a feel of how long you need to hold the jump button down in order to safely grab the letter. Now this area is where things get a little bit trickier. The low gravity in effect makes that jump quite tight. And you also have the space metals to deal with, but they're all one-hit kills, so they're not too threatening. At least yet, anyway. Now you need to be prepared for the next room, so as soon as you reach the top of the ladder, shoot the lowest of the 3 jet bombs and slide away from the edge of the right-hand wall. Or that's my advice anyway. On watching the footage back, it looked like having shot the lowest jet bomb, but if I stood right up against the wall or even descended the ladder a little, I'd also have been safe, but that isn't a guarantee. This thing is a dash-on, and we'll see him lots throughout the game. It can be quite irritating, but not here since he starts a mile away from us. It's Attack of the Space Metals, and I would advise, unlike what I did here, entering the screen high in the air, which will give you a chance to take out the 2 leftmost metals straight off the bat. That'll afford you more time to take out the lower ones, and everything doesn't feel quite so panicked. I said doesn't feel so panicked. Now if you're going Buster only, this screen just takes a little bit of getting used to. What with the missiles forcing you to jump really high, off and off the screen, you need to be fully aware of where you'll drop back onto the screen. You don't want to land on a toss machine, no really that's their names, or even worse I suppose in between platforms and on a spike. There's another dash on just before the boss gate, and this one could end up getting a little bit closer to you because the spike's not so far away from you this time, but still it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So Starman is the shield user of the bunch. Almost every classic Mega Man game has one. There are some exceptions. But like every other shield user, he's a complete idiot for not keeping it equipped all the time to actually prevent Mega Man from attacking him. But regardless, Starman's deal is to bound around the room, trying to jump into you. Every so often, he'll stop in mid-air, either just below the ceiling or just above the floor, and hurl his star shield at you. Obviously, just get out of the way of it and take your opportunity to attack him. It's better if he ditches the shield when he's just below the ceiling, as that should give you the time to hit him twice before he puts the shield back on, once when he's in the air, and once as he's landing. And he won't put the shield back on until he touches the ground. But if he's close to the ground, usually, if you're busy dodging the star shield anyway, won't have time to hit him twice. But he's pretty straightforward nonetheless. The fight does drag out a little bit because you only have a small window of opportunity to hit him, especially if you keep missing your shots like I'm doing here, but if you keep it cool, he should go down without too much trouble. I get Star Crash and Super Arrow. Star Crash is a shield weapon which protects you from enemies, and I don't care for it all that much, especially when trying to use it on the Robot Master it's supposedly good against. Super Arrow, on the other hand, is a useful utility item that allows you to scale walls. Kind of like Donald Duck's plunger and quack shot, if any of you have played that. So, one lone metal prevented me from another accidental perfect run. Surely, therefore, the stage couldn't have been that difficult a perfect run. No. No, it wasn't. Perfect run time! And since the first screw-up location is a fair way through the level, not until the start of the checkpoint actually, I wouldn't ordinarily have a lot to say for the first minute-ish. Up until that checkpoint, things are pretty straightforward. Don't forget about the low gravity, and where possible, take out enemies from a distance, and you should be fine. But the problem spots came pretty quickly one after the other, so to cover them all sufficiently well, I'll need to skip ahead and start now. So apologies that I'm not at the specific part of the level, but hopefully if you watch the Let's Play version, you'll have an idea of what I'm talking about. The first trouble spot was the enemy just before the letter N. You have to slide through a tiny gap and then boom! The enemy is right upon you and fires 2 pellet shots in your direction. It's the only enemy of its type in a stage that is a problem, and this one kinda makes up for all the rest. Almost straight away afterwards is that area with the one irritating jump over spikes. Spikes on the ceiling make me nervous in terms of not jumping too high. But on one occasion I didn't. But I didn't jump high enough to clear the floor spikes. And on another, I overcompensated and jumped too high, smack into the ceiling spikes. And then almost straight away after that is the jet bullet room. When you hone a strategy and know what you're doing, piece of cake. When you don't 100% know how to deal with the jet bullets, not a piece of cake. It took me 2 phases before I realised what I should do. And in case you missed it, the missile shrapnel went in completely different directions to the Let's Play version. One even went vertically down and would have caught me out if I'd stayed to the right or hung back on the ladder as I previously mentioned. So I'd go with the shoot and slide technique. Then the final trouble spot was the attack of the space metal screen I touched on before. And as I'm about to demonstrate, I just about get away with things here, but it was a close run thing. A couple of other times I wasn't so fortunate. So I reiterate, the best thing I can think of is to enter the screen at the top and take out the 2 highest, and happen to be the 2 leftmost metals, giving you that little bit more time to deal with the other ones. This moving platform screen wasn't really an issue for me. It's very hard to definitively say you should do this or that, but I usually have a pretty good feel for where Mega Man is positioned, even when he's off screen. I find that how far the screen itself has moved to the right is a good indicator for me as well, but I can see how it could be off-putting for people. If it is, then you might want to take things a little bit slower and get rid of all the toss machines before progressing. I didn't say it during the first fight, but as soon as it begins, slide to the right. Starman always seems to form this long jump to the other side of the screen, and sliding is a better way of avoiding crashing into him than trying to jump over him. Now I had no trouble with Starman at all, so there's not a whole lot else to say on difficulty, but I guess strategy wise there are a few things that are worth mentioning. So obviously the low gravity is still in effect, so don't get caught out by the increased length of time you'll hang in the air. Beyond that, I'd recommend trying to stick to the middle of the screen as much as possible. The 2 decoration background pillars, or whatever the hell they are actually fairly good markers. Try not to stray too far beyond them at either edge of the screen. The reason being that Starman can be a bit unpredictable in terms of how he's going to jump, and if you find yourself in a corner, then you don't have a lot of options in terms of which direction you can move in. By staying toward the middle, you give yourself a second option. Now admittedly, if you've been watching, it's not a strategy I employ very well at all during this fight. Several times I strayed right into the corners, but I still managed to get away with it. So even if you do find yourself in the corners, it's not a disaster. I guess one last word of caution would be not to get caught out by the radius of his shield. For some reason, to me anyway, it always looks smaller when it's circling round him than when he flings it at you. So don't go thinking it's smaller than it actually is. But I don't know if that's an optical illusion or just me. That's the second gravity-based level taken care of. So just how up and down were the attempted perfect runs? It only took 20 minutes to get the successful run, nicely in between gravity and stone, and therefore all 3 beaten in around an hour total. During those 20 minutes, I suffered 8 outtakes, none of them on Starman. Yeah, I'm warning you now, if you thought Mega Man 4's Robot Masters were easy, I had no outtakes on 6 of them. I personally think Mega Man 5's Robot Masters are even easier. As for the stage, the outtakes came in 2 by 2, hurrah hurrah! 4 trouble spots, all on which I screwed up twice. The enemy right before the letter N, the low gravity jump between spikes, the jet missile room, and the space metals screen. Other than the spike jump, it's all about being prepared for what's coming. Once you know how to deal with things, none of those areas are all that bad. Of course, advanced knowledge won't help you any with the spike jump, That's all about familiarity with the gravity and knowing how high you can safely jump without hitting the spikes. It's still not the worst jump in the world, but it's certainly not a gimme. And as for Starman, slide to the middle of the screen right at the start of the fight, and unlike me, try to avoid the corners of the screen. You'll obviously need to react to what Starman does, as opposed to outlining a cyclic pattern of moves, but he's not anything to write home about. Still exceedingly happy with how Mega Man 5 was going along up to this point. Surely you didn't expect anything else. Starman gets a 2 out of 10 from me. There are enough areas for potential slip-ups, as I discovered, not to warrant the lowly 1 out of 10 score. But with only 8 outtakes and 20 minutes spent obtaining a successful perfect run, I can't really go any higher. So that's all for this video. Join me next time when I'll be tackling the Robot Master who definitely has a gear loose. Cheerio.